today we're going to be starting with the 49ers, like we've been doing in the past several weeks. And I've created a little bit of a visual aid, to sort of help everybody kind of visualize what the 49ers are going to need, when talking about the biggest needs. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now. And I've created, a spreadsheet. What we can see here is that the 49ers are going to, in some ways, need to address many positions either in the draft or free agency. And right here, I just kind of want to run down what all the colors mean before I start, going into position by position. So if you see right here, I've got quarterback as, coded as green because I think that the 49ers need to add depth in that position. Whereas a position, let's just say, for example, like left end, I color coded blue because I think that the 49ers need to add starters at that position. So we're going to start with the offense. And we got, the 49ers have obviously Brock Purdy still with 2 years remaining on his contract. So that's what that number in the parentheses stands for, is how many years are remaining on his deal. So we've got Brock Purdy. And so far, I believe that Sam Darnold and Brandon Allen are free agents. And we'll go into the free agents. What do you think, Mike? Should I go over the free agents first or go over, the positions? What do you think would be probably better?
Well, I would say go through the positions first as far as who's under contract and then get into the free agents.
Yeah, I agree. So the 49ers, I believe, are going to have to, I don't know if it's really in their best interest to go after a backup quarterback through free agency, because Brock Purdy now is maybe more experienced than some of the quarterbacks that are going to be free agents, because Brock Purdy, played several years in college and has now played in 2 deep playoff runs, and if you're looking for a team that is looking for a backup quarterback, you probably want somebody, who can just step in there and maybe provide, a similar skill set that Brock Purdy can, operates the offense under. So I would probably look in the draft for that. So that way, I mean, you're already taking advantage of Brock Purdy's rookie deal. So you would probably want to keep the quarterback room as cheap as possible. If not, I could see the 49ers bringing either Sam Darnold or Brandon Allen back. But I think it would be in their best interest because right now they are currently under, I think they're -5 in salary cap, -5 million. I think it would probably be in their best interest to get more, cheap quarterbacks, as your backup. And who knows, you might even find the next Brock Purdy, right? Like, you're not looking for a guy who's going to probably compete and take the job away from Purdy. But I would assume that, you would want, if Bill Walsh had, Steve Young ready to go, behind Joe Montana, there's no reason why you can't get another young prospect, through the draft or maybe undrafted. I think you should draft a quarterback, but there's no reason why you can't draft a guy to be behind Brock Purdy. So I think if you take 1 or 2 guys, maybe one free agent, one through the draft, that's probably where you want to find your depth. So now we go on to the running back position, and we've still got Christian McCaffrey under contract for 2 more years. He is technically eligible for an extension at the end of next season, so it'll be interesting to keep an eye on that. Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason are both on contract years, so I think the likelihood of the 49ers keeping both of them is probably unlikely. I would see that, I could see that maybe they choose one or the other. But I think keeping both might be a long shot, but we'll see. If I had a choice, I think Jordan Mason has less mileage on him. And I think Elijah Mitchell is also a great player, so I don't think they can make a wrong decision with both of them. But Jordan Mason might have fresher legs. Um, Other than that, they're definitely going to want to draft running backs because I don't think that it is smart to pay running backs because they are higher risk positions and they you're already paying McCaffrey, so really he's going to be getting most of the touches, and you can get a guy like the 49ers have been getting in the draft, but maybe not using a third round pick, maybe use a later draft pick if you're going to waste it on a running back who isn't going to get in the game. So
Yeah. You could even find pretty solid running backs undrafted,
oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
look,
Same
a
goes
couple
for
of years ago, the
fullbacks.
49ers had Matt Breida, who was also undrafted. And I don't
Yeah.
even think
The
Raheem
Raiders.
Mostert was drafted.
Yeah, and the Raiders had Jalen Richard a few years back. He was really good, undrafted, and Alec Ingold at fullback, undrafted. So
let me double check. All right, on Mostert because I don't want to say it if it's wrong. So Raheem Mostert draft. Yeah, he was undrafted in 2015, and he fell on the 49ers' lap, I think, twice. So the 49ers, I think Kyle Juszczyk probably remains on this football team, although there is speculation that the 49ers might move on from him, in order to save a couple $1 million. He might be a cap casualty. So we'll have to keep an eye on him. But if the 49ers choose not to bring Kyle Juszczyk back, I doubt that they replace him. I don't think that the NFL, sort of utilizes fullbacks enough to justify the 49ers going out and getting another fullback, especially like with the way that their offense is like they already have great skill position players. I think maybe they need to focus on getting depth on the offensive line and really look for starters. But we'll talk about that in coming up. The wide receivers, obviously the 49ers still have Deebo Samuel under contract for 2 more years. Brandon Ayuk only has 1 year remaining with the team. So we're probably going to see Brandon Ayuk hold out until the 49ers provide him with the new contract that he thinks is satisfactory. It's probably going to be the drama of the offseason, if I had to guess.
For clarity,
Ronnie,
sorry, is this his 5th-year option this year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So Brandon Ayuk has played, 4 seasons. His rookie year, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and now we're, headed on to 2024, which would be his 5th year. So it'll be interesting what the 49ers decide to do with Brandon Ayuk, given their current cap situation. But I think the 49ers absolutely should add depth to wide receiver, regardless of what they're going to do with Brandon Ayuk, because Juwan Jennings is going to be a key, free agent. And Chris Conley is also a free agent, and Ray McCloud is also a free agent. So obviously, if the 49ers have to prioritize one of those 3 free agents, their priority should probably be Juwan Jennings, but another team might price them out. Yeah. So you've got Ronnie Bell as the 3rd string wide receiver, and then you've got Tay Martin as the 4th stringer who has 1 year left on his deal. Tay Martin kind of seems like one of those players that I could see the 49ers just kind of, bringing back, and he would be, in and out of the lineup in terms of like being active on game days or not. But I don't see him as like a mainstay starter. So the 49ers, I think, are probably going to address wide receiver most likely in the draft. And then they also have Danny Gray, who has been on injured reserve. And he still has 2 years left on his deal. And the 49ers are still waiting for him to make a contribution since being drafted. And, the thing about Danny Gray is I think his skill set was sort of drafted with Trey Lance in mind as quarterback, because Danny Gray is sort of that deep threat wide receiver. And as we saw in that first preseason game, I think Danny Gray caught, I think it was a preseason game against the Packers. Danny Gray caught like a, big bomb from Trey Lance. So I think that's sort of the mindset, or like, that they sort of had like the vision for Danny Gray. But, Brock Purdy brings, a different skill set. He's better on the intermediate stuff, throwing with anticipation. So Danny Gray just has to work on his route running and, being able to get open. Besides just outrunning the defenders, just straight up the field. As for tight ends, we've got George Kittle under contract for 2 more years. I would be very interested to see what the 49ers do with Kittle after that, or if they possibly move him beforehand. And the reason why I say that is not because I'm expecting them to move George Kittle, but, Bill Walsh always said it's better to move, it's better to trade a player a year too late than a year too early. And, I think that George Kittle maybe is showing a little bit of wear and tear over the years of being such a physical player. He is a block first player. Yeah. And then behind George Kittle, we've got Braden Willis under contract for 3 more years. He was drafted the same year as Cam Latu this past season. So they were both rookies. The notable free agents under the tight end position are Ross Dwelley and Charlie Warner. I could definitely see them bringing like Ross Dwelley back or Charlie Warner back because, they've done it in the past. I think that Ross Dwelley has been a free agent before and has decided to just stay with the 49ers, even though that they don't give him the football. But I don't know how much focus that they're going to actually put on the tight end position, but still, I would like to see there be sort of a deeper tight end room than, just kind of what they have right now. I think that they recently signed Jake Tongs. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I think it was announced on February 14th. Correct me if I'm mistaken, but he should be a practice squad player, but you never know how it shakes out in the offseason. So left tackle.
Sorry, really quick for Jake Tongs.
Yeah.
Essentially, what was he signed to a futures contract?
Let me look at it.
Probably along with like 10 other players or something. Because I know at the end of the season, which for the Niners came way later than most teams, teams like to sign their practice squad players to futures contracts.
Let's see here.
And it's essentially a 1-year deal.
This is what the 49ers have posted on their website. So Tongs originally entered the NFL after signing with the Chicago Bears as an undrafted free agent on May 6, 2022. He went on to appear in 4 games with Chicago, was released by the Bears on November 10th, 2022, and signed to the team's practice squad 2 days later, where he spent the remainder of the season. In 2023, Tongs signed as a reserve/future contract with the Bears on January 9th and was released by the team on August 17th. Yeah, this part down here doesn't even say.
Go to transactions up at the top. That's usually what I look at on Raiders.com.
Okay. So the transactions. So he was signed on the 13th. I said the 14th. Yeah, it just says that.
Though. Doesn't say like to what.
But he was signed with a bunch of other players that I think are going to be probably practice squad-esque, kind of players, fighting for a position, but, training camp bodies.
Right. So it said for Isaac somebody, the offensive lineman, it said reserve/future contract. I figured that's what they were all signed to. Usually that's what teams do at the end of the season. But anyways, not to hijack.
No, you're good.
Off the offensive line.
It was a good question. The offensive line. So I didn't highlight left tackle. Because they've got Jalen Moore as the backup, and obviously they've got Trent Williams. Obviously, you would want to upgrade, but I think that the more pressing need is going to be getting backups for the left guard, center, right guard, and right tackle position, and really actually getting starters for the right guard and right tackle position. If the 49ers can somehow afford a starting caliber right tackle or right guard through free agency, I say that they do it that way. Other than that, I could see them spending their first or second round pick on, a right guard and right tackle. I wouldn't even be opposed to them spending both their picks on that. But as we see later on, we're going to see that they also have other needs on defense. So the 49ers are spending all this money on their edge rushers, right? Well, they're spending it a lot on Nick Bosa. And then, they've got a huge gap, really. They've got a bunch of free agents on the defensive line. And I didn't even mention like the offensive line, John Feliciano. I don't see the 49ers bringing him back. But for the defensive line, they've got Javon Kinlaw as a free agent, Sebastian Joseph Day as a free agent, Kevin Givens as a free agent. For defensive end, they've got Chase Young and Cleveland Farrell. It's going to be very, very, I guess I've been saying very interesting like the entire episode. I want to find another word, but I would love to see the direction that they take. If they're going to try and bring Cleveland Farrell back, I think that he was having a great season. Maybe he's earned a contract somewhere else, but I know that, he finished the season on injured reserve. Drake Jackson, I expect to slide back, right back into, being in the mix. I don't expect him to be a practice squad player. We've got
Robert. You've got him down there just because he was on the injured reserve.
He was on IR.
Yeah.
So Robert Beal Jr. is the only other healthy edge rusher that the 49ers have. I would say Eric Armstead, but Eric Armstead primarily is a defensive tackle. And, some seasons they'll mix him in and out of, right end and left end. But, he primarily, I think, is most effective as a defensive tackle. Let's see. Robert Beal Jr.'s got 3 years left on his deal. Nick Bosa's got 5. So we don't have to worry about Nick Bosa. It's just about worrying about pairing him with, talent, because Nick Bosa can't just do it all by himself. So the 49ers, I wouldn't even be shocked if the 31st pick is an edge rusher. Mike, would you be shocked?
I guess my initial hunch, if you will, would be that they would pick an offensive lineman, but I could see a defensive lineman, sure. Especially, I guess, defensive end, because, as of right now, nobody's sticking out to me opposite Nick Bosa, especially assuming that they don't bring back Chase Young, and, obviously getting to the passer is a big deal in this league. I think after free agency, we'll really have a good gauge of where they might go in the draft. But I think from what I'm seeing today, the best bang for your buck at pick 31 is probably going to be an interior offensive lineman.
Mm-hmm. That's what I've been hearing too. So what I would like to see the 49ers do actually with their first pick is I would like to see them draft a right tackle. And then I would like to see Colton McKivitz slide to right guard, because Colton McKivitz in the first couple seasons was playing guard. I think that he could slide back there. And if you have to platoon McKivitz and Burford just to make it work, I think that should be fine. Burford is still young. I think he's 21, 22 years old. He's got 2 years left on his deal. And, I think that maybe you could find, some sort of journeyman the way that they found John Feliciano, right? And maybe have him, work in at right guard. I know it's not ideal, but really it's going to be, it's not always ideal when you're building a roster. And I wish it was. I wish the Niners could have the best offensive line in the league, but it takes years of assembling it. And, if maybe in this draft they could get a right tackle, and then in the following draft they could, possibly get another guard. The only thing is they might lose Aaron Banks in the following draft. So like I said, it takes years to really build this. And the 49ers are sort of a top heavy, top loaded team in terms of the way that they pay their players. So this is the price that you have to pay when you are retaining so much talent. So over here, back to the defensive line, the 49ers have practice squad players that they've signed, just on the 13th and the 14th. Players like Raymond Johnson III, Ernest Brown, Sam Akoyinu, Akoyananu. I hope I didn't botch that too bad. And then the 49ers brought back Alex Barrett and Austin Bryant. And then, like I said, Drake Jackson's probably going to slide back into, hopefully not the starting role. But if he is, hopefully he's improved. And I hope that the injury wasn't that serious. I know that Drake Jackson can have a good game here and there. We saw week 1, he had 3 sacks. So if he can, bring some consistency and, show that he can refine his pass rush moves, it's really going to be, I think, it's going to be telling on how the defensive line is going to sort of produce this year based on who they select as their defensive coordinator, because right now it's still February 26, 2024, and the 49ers still don't have a defensive coordinator. And there's only been reports of a couple people that they've interviewed for the position. So, yeah. I hope that they get one soon, because the combine is just about to start, and you probably ideally want to have a defensive coordinator keeping an eye on like all the defensive talent and who are a couple players that they're going to want in the draft. So I know the scouts really do most of that work, and keeping an eye on players and really building the draft board, but still, you probably want everybody all in lockstep and giving their feedback. So at defensive tackle, the 49ers need to add depth because they're losing Kinlaw and they're losing Joseph Day, who they acquired from I guess as a free agent because the Chargers released him, and they're losing Kevin Gibbons, like I mentioned earlier. But it's looking like right now the decision to pay Javon Hargrave, I mean, he's a quality starter, but I don't think the 49ers are getting out of him what they expected when they gave him the big contract. Like, they essentially gave him the contract that they could have given DeForest Buckner, but they gave it to Javon Hargrave. And I mean, he's not a bad player. It's just that the 49ers could have used that money and put it towards, several, I guess, solid players, as opposed to putting it into one really good player. You probably, like, the 49ers, I think, are going to have a little bit of depth issues coming up in the coming years with all this money that's coming from all these backloaded deals. It's going to be very interesting. It's going to be eye-opening and hopefully not so disheartening. I don't know. How do you see it, Mike?
For D tackle?
Just in general, like the 49ers roster, as you're seeing so far of what they have, obviously they have 11 draft picks to work with and negative $5 million in cap space to work with.
Yeah.
All these contracts are starting to really make it hard. There's going to be hard decisions coming up, and Brandon Ayuk is going to be one of those decisions.
Yeah. I think what's making it difficult as far as the outlook is the negative $5 million in cap space. I don't know who you can cut to change that. I know you mentioned Juszczyk a couple minutes ago. I know a lot of teams will, obviously, first and foremost, teams will restructure contracts to clear up space. So any players that have 3 to 5 years remaining, you can make a lot of cap space with those contracts. Whether it's Boza, McCaffrey, maybe somebody like Kittle, you can restructure, to make space now, but you're going to pay for it later, right? And that's maybe part of the reason why you guys have negative $5 million now is because you did that a couple years ago, as well as obviously having a very top-heavy roster with a lot of big contracts. And we were having a conversation earlier where, we were talking about, hey, remember when at the trade deadline last year, the Niners had $40 million, like mid-season. And then, of course, you trade for Chase Young, which probably cut into that a little bit. But, basically the point of the conversation was, doesn't that money carry over? And I don't know the exact rule for carrying over cap space. I think there might be a limit, but I'm not sure. There might also be like a limit per year or every couple of years or something like that. But it's possible that just something I thought of earlier was, what if they had that 30 to $40 million in cap space last year, possibly unspent, specifically to carry over this year, just to help with how bad the cap space was going to be. Maybe that $30 million left over is actually a part of this -5, where it could have been -35, but instead it's just -5. I don't know for a fact. That's just a theory. It's possible that nothing rolled over, but wasting $30 million in cap space doesn't make sense to me. In that
On a
case,
team that could have won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, in that case, if that's the case, week 18, restructure with Nick Bosa, front load his contract. Hey Nick, we're going to give you another $30 million today if you can take a little less the next couple of years and save. So my guess is it rolled over, and it helped you this year, even though it doesn't look like it right now. But your team is loaded with top heavy contracts: Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, Christian McCaffrey. The only person that doesn't have a big contract is your quarterback, right? Eric Armstead, Charvarius Ward, George Kittle, Trent Williams, right? So that's the tough thing. And obviously, looking at this depth chart, it's like, well, the depth looks like an issue for the most part, besides weak side linebacker, left end, a couple of those positions that clearly need a starter. But the real question for me, like I started, it's that -5 million in cap space. If John Lynch and company can find their ways to clear that up, I think you can find some serviceable players, whether it's in free agency or in the draft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The 49ers have to have a great draft. I feel like have been having spotty drafts the past couple of years, and haven't had many contributions out of their rookies. Besides, this past year we saw Jair Brown, we saw Jake Moody, and outside of that, I mean, what rookies really played? Did they just draft nobody? No, they drafted players. They just didn't really, that's a pattern with Shanahan. I noticed is that their young players don't really get trust, right? They have to earn it. I'm trying to look along the line of players. I mean, Purdy definitely in his rookie season contributed to the team, but he was the third string quarterback going in. Bosa was an instant impact. Mitchell, instant impact. I guess it just depends. And I think it probably just has to do with the fact that the 49ers have not been drafting well. So their players aren't really playable on a win now team. So going back to the defense, after Hargrave, the 49ers also still have Kalia Davis, who's on contract for 2 more years. He's still, ended the season, I guess, on IR. They have T.Y. McGill and Spencer Wage. I think it's or Wagey. Um, I don't necessarily know how to pronounce that, but T.Y. McGill and Spencer Wage are still under contract for one year. So hopefully we can get contract year T.Y. McGill and contract year Spencer Wage, but um, not all players are built to get big paydays. So I'm not necessarily going to pour all my expectations into those two players. Um, for linebacker, the 49ers have Fred Warner, obviously as the starting middle linebacker, one of the best middle linebackers in football. He's got 3 years left on his deal. And then behind him, they have D. Winters. D. Winters is another rookie who they drafted last year. Didn't make a single impact. I maybe saw him get like 1 sack this season, this past season in 2023. But Dre Greenlaw is, going to be under injured reserve for I don't know how many months. He's not currently placed on it, but I know that he had surgery on his Achilles to repair it after he tore it in the Super Bowl. Yeah, that was a big blow for the 49ers because now they don't just have to address the depth of their, weak side and strong side linebacker. They have to find a starter. I mean, either way, they were going to have to find a starter at one of those positions, but, now they have to find 2. And it's a team with not a lot of cap space, but a lot of draft picks. So they have to hit it. We're going to find out how, we're going to find out just what John Lynch is made of. And, if Adam Peters really was as big of an impact as people think that he might have been. I mean, we won't really find out, we won't necessarily know the answer. Like if the 49ers draft well, that doesn't mean that it was all Adam Peters, or if they draft poorly, that all the good stuff was Adam Peters. It's just like, John Lynch is going to have to find other avenues on, how to get through with the scouting department on how to draft well this year. Jalen Graham, also another player that was drafted last season that didn't make a tremendous impact on this past season, is going to probably have to step up and maybe split time with a rookie. Because the 49ers had other linebackers, but they are going to be free agents. So Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, Oren Burks, those are 2 players who are not going to be, probably back on the team unless the 49ers, re-sign them. And then corner is very, very interesting and scary. So Charvarius Ward, Diamador Lenore, and Ambry Thomas are their top 3 corners, or at least on the depth chart. Ward and Lenore are, great starting corners in the NFL, or at least Charvarius Ward is in my opinion, a lockdown corner, and has done a tremendous job this past season. Diamador Lenore has improved so much. Ambry Thomas, he has his good weeks, and then he has his other weeks where he just gets picked on. So they're all going to be free agents this upcoming year. I don't know if the 49ers can afford to bring Charvarius Ward back after that. I could see them re-signing Lenore and letting Ward walk because Ward might command a bigger, payday. I don't know. How do you see it, Mike?
I think it depends on the cap space,
Mm-hmm.
I guess it also probably depends on how good Ward plays next season. If he repeats his 2023 season, I don't see how you let him go. I don't know if he's eligible for a franchise tag. I don't know how that works. I don't know if you are eligible to do that if he comes from a different team, or if it's only if you've drafted them. I'm not sure. But Yeah, the way that he played this past season, I'd be keeping Ward. But again, if you're coming into next season and it's negative $10 million in cap space, well, you probably do have to let him go and try to get a comp pick.
I think you can franchise tag any player because I think that the 49ers they've used a franchise tag on Robbie Gould before. And he was not drafted by the 49ers.
Yeah, so I could see Charvarius Ward being a franchise tag, option next season because, I mean, just looking around, I see Eric Armstead with 1 year left on his deal, but there's no reason to make him a franchise player, at whatever cost that would be. And if you want to scroll up just for a second to the offense, just really quick. I mean, Aaron Banks maybe, but probably not. Colton McKivitz probably. I mean, to the left, I don't know.
No, I know.
Oh, Ayuk. Ooh, that's
that would be an interesting franchise tag option.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you have either Ayuk or Ward. Those are two big names. And then you have two offensive line starters as well. So, yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, I'm looking at Brandon Ayuk, Aaron Banks, Charvarius Ward, and Eric Armstead as all four of those guys could be franchise tagged next season.
Yeah, but Eric Armstead won't. I can tell you right now. That's
I don't think so.
That's like north of $20 million for that franchise tag.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, well, they're already paying him 20-something million right now, as is. So.
Yeah, but is he worth that?
No. So. And Eric Armstead's a good player, but he's not.
Yeah.
He's not producing $20 million defensive lineman numbers.
Yeah, 100%.
Mm-hmm. And then behind these guys, the 49ers have young corners. They've got Samuel Womack and they've got Darrell Luter Jr. Womack looked like he was going to be a playmaker, just a couple of years ago. Who, he had 3 interceptions in that preseason. He was, he showed out in the preseason, but one thing that we've learned about the preseason, especially on this show the past year, it doesn't signify or determine how the rest of the season is going to play out. Like we saw the 49ers struggle this past preseason and they went to the Super Bowl. We saw the Raiders look like Super Bowl favorites in the preseason, and they fired their coach just a couple weeks later. So don't always believe what your eyes are showing you in the preseason, as tempting as it is. And then at strong safety, the 49ers have Jair Brown. I think that he's going to be the unquestioned starter. At free safety, I believe that Talanoa Hufanga is going to probably step into, I think Jair Brown might actually move to free safety and Hufanga might move back to his spot as strong safety. But
I agree.
Excuse me. Because I think Jair Brown is a little bit more versatile, and he's a lot quicker. He's younger, so he can be molded in different ways. And I think that this past season he did play in different spots.
Yeah, I could see. I don't know. I mean, we'll see how Hufanga plays coming off the torn ACL. I could see him playing a lot in the box, just kind of see ball, get ball, rather than playing deep zone or something like that.
Yeah, and the 49ers still have George Odom under contract, for one last year. So that's really the depth that they're going to have there. I don't see how they walk away from this NFL draft without drafting another safety or getting one through free agency.
Yeah. Could you see them trying to bring back Deshaun Gibson?
I think he's too old.
Yeah, he's 31, right?
Let me look that up. Tayshaun Gibson age. He's 33.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you can let him go. I mean, he made some big plays. That Lions game, I still say that forced fumble he made was the play of the game.
Yeah, no, that was huge. He did rip the ball, from Jahmyr Gibbs' hand or punch it out. But, I don't necessarily think that you re-sign a guy just for one play.
No, no. But he might be good depth if he would take like a vet minimum contract to stay with a winning team. It'd be a good.
Yeah, I mean, if he takes a vet minimum, he already knows what the 49ers kind of want to do on defense. But
Right.
there have been plays where it's like, the defense has shown a lack of effort, and I think Gibson was one of those guys on one of the replays in the Lions game where he thinks that maybe Dre Greenlaw is going to make the tackle, and Jameson Williams just goes for a touchdown. So just one thing to look at. And, like I said, one play isn't going to be the determining factor whether or not the 49ers choose to bring somebody back. But let me go back and look at the free agents. I sort of covered most of them, but I just kind of want to go over whether or not I think the 49ers should or might bring them back. So John Feliciano, I think, did a good job this past season at right guard, but there has been drama since the Super Bowl regarding John Feliciano. Mike, did you hear about like him throwing Spencer Burford under the bus in order to protect Colton McKivitz?
Oh yeah, it was Burford, and then all of a sudden, for some reason, the Eagles' defensive tackle got into it, and then and basically John Feliciano like admitted like that's my bad, bro, to Burford. Like, I'm just hungover. I was like, oh, dude. And I remember telling you, I think it was 2 pods ago, we talked about it. And I was like, well, unless it was just a personal conversation, but I said, Feliciano was drafted as a Raider. And I remember really wanting the Raiders to keep him because he was like, 3 out of 4 years, he was a backup. But he was like the type of guy who, if somebody on the interior offensive line went down, he would be the guy to step in and play for them, and he wouldn't like falter, he would stand his ground. I was like, oh man, I like that. There's actually a guy on the Raiders roster that we'll get into later that reminds me of him. And 4th year, he became the starter. He starts, yada yada, becomes a free agent, and I wanted the Raiders to keep him. They didn't. And then like 2 years later, he's on Twitter talking like mad shit about the Raiders one like random offseason day, and I was like, what is this? Like, I don't remember if it was the day Rodney Hudson got let go or Tom Cable got fired or something, but he was like airing out Tom Cable and just the Raiders in general. And I was just like, okay, I understand like going after a position coach, but why the franchise? What are we doing here? So he is prone to the Twitter fingers, I think. Perhaps when he has a few too many, but who knows?
And then I swear I saw news the other day that the 49ers were cutting Isaiah Oliver, or releasing him. So I don't think they're going to bring him back. And then Logan Ryan, I think that, he might be like towards the end of his career. I don't know. There were a couple plays where it was just he I don't know if necessarily he was like put in bad positions, but he typically is a corner, but they had him playing safety, and just him going downhill trying to tackle a runner. He whiffed on a couple of those tackles. So I don't know if they'll bring Logan Ryan back. Terrence Mitchell, I couldn't even tell you who he is. I think that he might have been a practice squad player. Chase Young, I don't think that the 49ers are going to bring him back, primarily due to effort issues that, especially were highlighted in the NFC Championship game. Chase Young, I think, did bounce back and have a good Super Bowl, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to correct all the, I guess, lack of motivation that, was probably carried throughout the season.
Yeah. I think it's weird to say this, but I think Clelin Ferrell is worth more to teams than Chase Young, And maybe as a pass rusher, Chase Young still has more potential easily than Clelin Ferrell, but I think if you had both of them on a field, any given play, Cleveland Farrell might make more plays than him.
Mm-hmm.
Just because Cleveland Farrell's a really good run defender.
I think Chase Young is probably more gifted athletically, but I think
Right.
Cleveland Farrell is probably a little bit more disciplined.
Yeah. And I would say I think Cleveland Farrell will be the better bang for your buck player coming out of this year's free agency. I think some team's going to overpay Chase Young and they're going to regret it. And Cleveland Farrell's going to get some like slightly underpaid contract and he's going to pay dividends for that defense, at least against the run.
Yeah, so I think it would be in the 49ers' best interest to target Cleveland Farrell and bring him back. And then Javon Kinlaw, I don't know what Javon Kinlaw would cost, but the 49ers are sort of experiencing a I guess a shortage of defensive tackles, so they might re-sign Javon Kinlaw to maybe a short-term deal. I don't see them bringing back Sebastian Joseph Day. They might bring back Kevin Givens. They've done it, a couple times. Tayshaun Gibson, we'll see, because he knows, I guess he knows the personnel on the 49ers and, he's already been on the Niners for at least 2 years now. I don't think that they'll bring back Matt Pryor. He, never really saw the field for the 49ers. I don't necessarily know who Ben Barch is. The 49ers might bring back Oren Burks on a cheap team-friendly deal if he's willing to take one. Oren Burks, though, did get picked on during the Super Bowl because, obviously Dre Greenlaw, went out with injury. So I don't know. The 49ers are kind of looking at depth issues at linebacker. So I don't know if they'll have to look at bringing Oren Burks back or Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles back, or possibly maybe bringing a guy like Azeez Al-Shaair back. I think that would be a perfect fit for the team. I just don't know if they can afford it because Azeez Al-Shaair is like a top 20 linebacker in the NFL.
Yeah, and also whoever your defensive coordinator is,
Yeah, if it's Vrabel, Azeez Al-Shaair can come back and he'll be like, let me introduce you to my friend Mike Vrabel. Yeah. Randy Gregory, I don't know if the 49ers are going to bring him back. I feel like he was kind of hit or miss in games. Sam Darnold, we already talked about. I think the 49ers, I could see them bringing back one or the other. Probably Brandon Allen, because I feel like Brandon Allen is a guy who isn't going to be as expensive as a guy like Sam Darnold. And it seemed like the 49ers liked Brandon Allen. And I really think that the 49ers, the direction they should go is have another project in case Brock Purdy doesn't. Like, the 49ers could absolutely be in a position in 1 year from now where they don't know whether or not to extend Brock Purdy. And so I think it's very important for them to have a backup plan. So you keep a guy like Brandon Allen, and if Brock Purdy is going to price the 49ers out and they seriously can't afford him, like, I guess it'll just be like, all right, is Brock Purdy going to be another guy like Daniel Jones or Jimmy Garoppolo, or what Tua is probably going to be, and be a guy who's going to be too expensive for the team that he's currently on for the play that that he provides, and maybe you can get comparable play out of a guy out of like a young guy in the draft.
Man,
you know what I mean? Like that's a question that I have. I'm not saying that Purdy is going to be that, but the 49ers should be prepared. They should be prepared for that. Because how much of it is actually Shanahan? How much of it is actually the talent, the supporting talent? I'm gonna get cooked online. I already see it because I'm over here, talking about Purdy. Purdy he's making great plays. Like, Purdy's making great plays, so he's going to be an expensive football player. on a team that is not going to have money to pay quarterbacks going forward. And we have the supposed correct system for any quarterback. So the 49ers need to have a backup plan in case Purdy prices them out.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think I saw that Purdy has 2 more years left on his deal. We'll see what the team's cap space looks like, after 2 seasons from now. I could see players like Trent Williams and obviously Eric Armstead, one of either Charvarius Ward, Brandon Ayuk, or your offensive lineman, Aaron Banks and Colton McKivitz, not being on the team. If you can get some rookies to fill them in within those 2 years, besides one of either Ward or Ayuk, I think you can afford Purdy. And I really think, we've talked about this current Super Bowl window that the Niners have. I think it's through Purdy's contract. And then I think what happens is players like Kittle get let go. Players like McCaffrey get let go. Debo, he gets let go. And that's a lot of cap space getting freed up to pay the quarterback. And I think that's going to be the way it goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if I was a betting man, I would bet that the 49ers are probably going to do everything that they can to give Brock Purdy his contract and get him back with the team. But anything can happen between now and 2 years. And, anything can happen between now and the next season. Super Bowl hangovers happen. Yeah. Anything can happen, and the 49ers need to be prepared for any scenario. But I think Purdy's probably going to have a good season this upcoming year. And I think the 49ers are going to pay him, if not to be a Super Bowl contender, then to just fill up the seats because the fan base loves Brock Purdy and it's going to make money.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think you have that window, and then you have to have something to bring in the fans. So, having Purdy, I think he's such a good quarterback paired with Shanahan that you can lose players like Kittle, McCaffrey, and replace them with younger guys, and Purdy can go out there and still win games with a good enough defense led by Fred Warner and maybe Charvarius Ward,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So,
and Nick Bosa.
Yeah. I already talked about Ross Dwelley and Charlie Warner. I could see the 49ers bringing them back. It's just a matter of if they'll come on a cheap deal and if they would come back. The 49ers tried to draft 2 tight ends this past year, made no contribution whatsoever. Charlie Warner blocking, but he wasn't one of the ones that they drafted. Cam Latu, they drafted him, and apparently he couldn't catch a ball to save his life. And one thing that Grant said something like this past offseason, they're like something along the lines of, they drafted this tight end. He's got he's got great legs, but he was born with no hands. Just the funny criticisms that Grant has from time to time. So Ray McLeod, I don't know if the 49ers are going to bring him back. I don't think that they are or really should. Chris Conley, maybe, but he wasn't necessarily a player that was like consistently in the lineup. Juwan Jennings, I think the 49ers should try and bring back, but they might get priced out. They're paying a lot of other players. Alfredo Gutierrez, I'm like 99% sure they're going to bring him back because he doesn't like take up a roster spot on the practice squad. So, because he is an international player, and I think that there's like I think there's some sort of rule in place where it doesn't take up, a roster spot on the practice squad. And then they've got Jason Verrett, who's going to be coming off another season-ending injury. He's had like 7 of them. poor Jason Verrett. I would love to see him back, but you just have to think after each one, it's like, oh man, is this going to be the one that ends his career?
Yeah.
It's so unfortunate because he's such a great player. So yeah. And then the last thing that I didn't get to touch on is special teams. The 49ers might actually, I might color code this in green because they might need to look for a different starting kicker other than Jake Moody. I think it's worth looking for another veteran, and bringing in a guy and not just relying on Jake Moody. Although I'll say, I feel like a lot of kickers that are actually really good struggle a lot early on, or like kind of inconsistent in the first couple of years, and then they really like hit their stride and are very comfortable the rest of their careers. It's kind of weird. Like wasn't Adam Vinatieri kind of that way at first, and then he made the game-winning kicks in like the Super Bowl.
Right. I mean, for about 3 minutes, Jake Moody had the all-time longest kick in a field goal. I mean, in a Super Bowl. But fuck.
Yeah.
You know what I meant.
Yeah. And then the Niners still have Wisnowski under contract for 3 more years, and Tabor Pepper. They're not going to make a change there.